The Prime Minister, good morning.
Good morning.
Will we see something substantive and tangible post-Cabinet today, re the economy and the virus?
You'll see announcements, some areas where we've been able to complete rapidly some of the work we know needs to be done, and then you'll see where we've got extra work underway. So we want to give a clear direction of travel. Some of the work we're doing, Mike, is quite substantial and taking there's a bit of detail to work through, but I want people to know exactly where we're heading and why.
Will there be money flowing today?
There already is. So there's a couple of areas where we've already put in packages. What we've learned over the weekend from the Minister of Finance, for instance, he made some direct calls into those industries that we know are affected and said, look, what's going to make the biggest difference to you? And they're quite targeted responses that are required. And so that's where we've got to make sure that we design this correctly and get it going as soon as we can. A couple of areas that you'll hear us talk about. Business New Zealand, Council of Trade Unions, exporters, I met with them on Monday. They said, give us clear advice and guidance on how to deal with self-isolation. They said, make sure that when the government is paying its bills, it's paying them promptly, and that's a decision we've already made. So we have an expectation. I'm writing letters to every department today, pay within 10 working days, get the money out the door, that'll help. And the third thing they said was make sure that the stand-downs, if people are losing their jobs, that they're not waiting before they're getting support. We've already made decisions on that.
Okay, so some of the stuff that people are suggesting you do, cuts in GST, cuts in tax, wage subsidies, none of that's going to come today.
So there are areas where we're doing some extra work, and after Cabinet today I'll give a bit more detail on that. But again, it is about what we want to make sure, cutting GST, for instance, big costs generally to the economy, not necessarily a targeted response. Wage subsidies, training subsidies, things like that, you can design in a more targeted way. So I'll be giving a bit of a sense of direction we're heading in after Cabinet today.
Are we going into recession at the end of Q2, do you think?
Oh, look, a lot of speculation, and that's that at this stage, just purely speculation. This is going to have an impact. At the moment, suggestions that I've heard, but this again was a week, 2 weeks ago from some bank economists were, up to 0.6% impact on growth. But at this point, actually, it's just all speculative. We have to make sure we're prepared, though. So even though we might not predict it, we need to prepare for it.
Do we need to think, once this is flushed through, of the overarching reliance we have on China? We sell more goods to them. We have more students coming from there. We have more tourists coming from there. And when they go down, we go down.
This is an argument that, if you'd had the joy and pleasure of sitting through one of my long business speeches before, Mike, you would have heard me talk about, because that's exactly right. Perfect example, rock lobsters. That basically 100% of that export market going straight into China. So a massive hit for them. We managed to work with them to help actually soften the blow of that. But that, again, another reason we need to make sure our exporters diversify. It's why we've been focused on the EU FTA. And it's why, of course, the CPTPP and other agreements have proven so important for us. We must diversify our markets.
Do you worry, and I don't know where I sit on this yet, because I talked to Grant Robertson on Friday. He seemed to talk the economy up. He said he talked to the dairy was doing okay. He talked to the banks said they weren't dealing with a lot of people who were struggling as yet. So he's giving a positive spin on this. Do you potentially run the risk of not being in front of this? The numbers are worse than you thought, and you're throwing money all over the place in a panic eventually.
No. In fact, that's exactly what needs to be avoided. So actually what Grant will be reflecting is simply the conversations he's had, and I had the same one with dairy reps last week. The combination of the drought prices and the fact that, for instance, their product people are still consuming, so they are doing okay. And the banks at the moment are reflecting that things haven't quite filtered through to them yet. MSD, even the numbers there, are mostly actually people seeking support primarily outside of Gisborne because they're in self-isolation. Now, none of that for me is actually real-time data necessarily, with the exception of dairy. So we do need to get ahead. That's why the planning work that we've got in place now is actually if this becomes much larger scale.
Okay. What about the Thai restaurant? One singular example, a Thai restaurant, one of Auckland's oldest, went bust last week because of the virus and CRL. That's on you guys, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure it's fair to blame COVID-19 on the New Zealand government.
That tipped them over, but they had trouble with the CRL. Between the two...
On CRL though, I mean, this is where I am gonna say we've put in place what is needed by CRL Limited.
Clearly not.
To support businesses. That is, we have. Now what I'm relying on though, Mike, is CRL actually to go out and do their job.
They're not doing their job then, are they?
At this point, the update I've had is that they've been out and in contact with all the local businesses. Clearly that hasn't been in a timely enough way for that business.
So what do you say to that business?
First I say to CRL, you've got to move a bit more quickly. We've given you the ability to do this. Now it needs to be done.
And what do you say to the business?
And to the business, I mean, look, Mike, of course you can make an assertion about what has happened in that case. I can't make that. I haven't seen what's been happening for their business over the last couple of years, but I have driven through that area recently, and I have to say in the middle of the day, what I saw was huge patronage, actually, particularly for the coffee shops down that strip. Okay. I can't say what's happened for them, though.
How sticky is the gun reform problem with New Zealand First?
Oh, no, not at all. Actually,
So it's going to be put through by March 15, no worries then?
Look, I'm not going to say that because it needs to come back for second reading, and it depends how long committee stages take. Usually a lot of debate happens then. But it's just come out of select committee, and I believe off the top of my head was something that had like 25 amendments. Mm. It does take a while to get that drafted and back into the House.
So they will come on board eventually, New Zealand First. They will vote in favour.
We will absolutely have this legislation passed. Actually soonish before we break for the election, that's for sure. But we will have it passed.
Heavily amended because of it?
Not heavily, no. In fact, there's always amendments that come out of select committee, but I need to let that bit run its course first, and then it'll be back in the House. You'll be able to see the changes. But the main ones, of course, are creating a registry and making sure that actually we don't let guns get in the hands of people who do not deserve the right to have them. That is the primary principles.
The Residential Tenancies Amendment Bill, a landlord who does not notify their tenant of a change to their name or address can be penalised $750. Not giving a receipt for rent can attract a fine of $350. Why would you want to do that?
Well, imagining and of course without having gone through and looked at the specific schedule, making it for the landlord not notifying of their name and address.
Yeah.
Change simply because if a tenant has an issue and you can't find them, that becomes really problematic.
Why? What about a receipt? Is no receipt really worth a fine and the administration of a fine?
I'm not going to speculate on that. You'll be basing that on Simon Bridges' announcements on red tape.
No, I'm not. No. It's nothing to do with the Bridges at all. It's from the landlords. It just seems needlessly administrative. Why make it hard to be a landlord?
Well, no, we're certainly not trying to do that. We do need decent landlords, but a decent landlord makes sure that they're always contactable. If you move and your tenant can't find you, that can cause all sorts of trouble. The receipt I can't give you straight off the bat. That I'm sure that there'll be very, very good policy rationale why we needed to do that, because everything I can tell you always has a reason.
Are you homotailed this week?
Soon. I don't know if I want to say this week. In part, as you can imagine, we are quite focused on COVID-19 at the moment.
Appreciate your time. Jacinda Ardern on the program each Monday morning.